settled back in from the FLW Tour event here at Hartwell. This is a load of weight off of my shoulders. This was the tournament that I was worried most about, even though it's at home. I knew it was a big opportunity for me to make up a lot of ground in the points from having a bad tournament at Lake Okeechobee. So I wanted to make this one count. Fortunately, everything kind of played to my hand. A lot of the things that I do the best, or what I think I do the best, have the most confidence in, was working at this event. So the result was a great finish. I barely missed that cut by a couple ounces. I've got 4 more tournaments to try to make the cut in this year. That's my ultimate goal, is just to make one top 20 cut. So I'm going to walk you through some of the baits that I used this week and tell you how it all went down, hoping to help you catch some fish as well. Anytime after really February, you're bound to have a big spawn, a big flush of fish move to the bank. I could tell it even in pre-practice when the water was in the 40s that the fish were really itching to get to the bank. So I knew that it was a possibility that it'd be a spawning event. So my first day of practice, I immediately went to places where I thought that the fish would spawn. And I connected right off the bat. The first day of practice was really good. The water was warming so quick this year. When we started practice, the water was in the mid 60s, 64, 65 in the morning, getting close to 70. And then on Tuesday, the water, even in the morning, was already in the upper 60s, getting into the lower 70s. And those fish moved so fast. In a day or two, they had spawned and gone. And some of the places that I was fishing was backwater ponds. And here on Lake Hartwell, of course, we're notorious for the herring. And these fish, they'll go to these backwater ponds and they only go there to spawn and they leave. They don't live there. They're not resident fish. They're super migratory. They'll go back to those backwater areas and then they'll leave. And some of those fish that I found in those backwater areas, that was about the last move of fish that I caught on that first day of practice. Went out the second day, didn't have a really that great a day of practice. Still caught a lot of fish, but just not a great day of practice. You know, there's a lot of fish on beds. There was a lot of guys idling in and out of pockets, and everybody was looking for those spawning fish. But one thing that I really keyed in on is nobody was really sight fishing in that middle portion of the lake and in the upper stretches of the rivers. Everybody was headed down south to the creeks down south near the dam. And those pockets were getting a lot of pressure. There was a lot bigger fish on the southern portion of the lake, but from the middle part of the lake, Reed Creek, Portman Shoals, from there to any of the Seneca River 6 and 20s arm, nobody was fishing in that arm, hardly at all. I saw very few boats, and there was just as many fish, but they weren't as easy to see. You really had to take your time and ease in those pockets to see those fish. The only way you really could see one is if you made him move. I keyed in on that the last day of practice, and it turned out to be
you can actually get up and see bass react to your bait and see how they're actually biting it. When you're out there sight fishing, the most important thing that you can remember is that fish really, their senses are really heightened during this time of the year. Even though when you're flipping to a fish, he may seem like he's unaware that you're there, but he's totally unaware. If he can feel that little 3-inch creature bait or finesse worm, whatever you're flipping into that fish, he definitely feels your 20-foot bass boat 20 foot away from him. So I try to keep as much distance as I can away from a fish. That way he can concentrate on the bait more than he is on me. When you come in these pockets here at Lake Hartwell, if you rush into them, one thing you'll notice that a fish that's on the bed, he'll swim right towards the boat. That's his first reaction. They're curious, they want to know what's going on. So if you can cast to a fish before he ever realizes that the boat is even coming, your chances of catching that fish are far greater. So one of the tricks that I'll use, and I'll tell you about it, is if I know where one's bedding, and if I can't get him just by casting to him, one of my biggest tricks, one of the things that really contributed to a lot of my bites this week, is what I call long lining, basically. I'll find the spot in the bed that the fish is really using. I'll put my bait in that particular spot, open the bill, get the trolling motor on high, and get out of there. I'll back out, 20, 30 yards away from the fish so he doesn't hear me, he doesn't see me, doesn't feel the vibration of the trolling motor. What that does is that really lets him focus and hone down in on the bait. When you're really close to a fish, what they'll do is his attention is split between the boat and you. He looks down at the bait and he looks at the boat. You hit the trolling motor, he'll look at the boat. He'll look down at the bait, and then your co-angler makes some noise in the back, and then he looks back at the boat. So his attention is split, and he can't really focus in on what's going on. If I get out of the way, get the boat way away from him. His attention really directs towards that lure. And once that happens, your chances of catching, you'll catch your fish a lot quicker if you do that.
I was using 2 colors primarily. And honestly, I used those 2 colors because I ran out of one, so I had to fish something, and all I had was sprayed grass. I started out with watermelon red, and I ended up using sprayed grass by the time it was over. Very simple setup. There's not a lot to this. I'm using a 1/0 decoy hook, and I've also have a 5-inch Zinker Z, sprayed grass, or watermelon red. Color's not important. It's all about the profile and action. You don't want to get crazy probably, but just keep it in the pocket with your colors. And I used, you can see on my bait here, there's a little bit of shrink wrap around there. And I put my hook, I didn't hook it exactly in the middle, I hooked it just about 2/3 the way towards the front of the bait. All that does is that lets the bait sink. It gives it a little bit different sinking action. If I hook it in the middle, it sinks really slow. If I hook it a little bit towards the front, it lets it sink a little bit faster. And as I give it the rod tip a little action, it gives it a little bit different action than if I hook it in the middle. This is when sometimes I couldn't get the draw the strike for some of those bedding bass with just the Zinker Z. Some of them wanted something real subtle. Some of them wanted something a little bit more aggressive. And when I had to use something more aggressive, I went to a 1/2 ounce sinker, 3/0 trocar, Eagle Claw trocar hook, and this is just a turbo crawl here, and I flip that into the bed and just try to agitate them, try to hit them, try to bring it in there. Sometimes I had to let it set a while and they'd nose up on it. I didn't catch quite as many fish on this. I think on the last day I did end up catching one of my keepers on that, and so that's what I was using for and I really had to sit there and agitate one. As I said, we're in a warming trend this week. It was really warm. I never found, our lakes are known for the herring spawn, and I never found that herring spawn during practice. I tried a few places I actually would find fish, but no herring. And I had a boat number on day number 2. I was boat number 5. And so I knew I had at least an hour or two that I wanted to play around and experiment. I had a decent day, so I had some room in there to play and try to experiment. So day 2, I ran to a couple places that I knew had some history of having herring and catching some topwater fish on there. And I just used a fluke minnow type bait. This time of year when the herring spawn, they get really shallow on main lake points. And it's not always main lake points. It can be secondary points or in pockets, or they spawn on the dock sponsons and things like that, but primarily it's always on main lake points. So I just pulled up to a point, and lo and behold, the first point I cast to, I got bit, didn't catch one on the first cast. Very quickly I caught a 3.5 pounder. I lost 2 others on that same bait. I followed back up also with the wacky rig that I just showed you. That's also a good bait to throw on herring spawn fish as well, but we didn't have much wind on day 2 that morning, so that bite didn't last very long. I was able to get one keeper on there, and I went to a couple other spots. I found the herring was there, everything was setting up really great. I was really hoping that I'd make the cut, because I think I could have made up a lot of ground on day 3, but that didn't happen. So nevertheless, it was a great finish. Rookie season on tour, I'll take a 24th or in the 20s all season long. I think that'll go a long way. Beaver's just set up very well for me. I think that's more of a lake that I can pull out my spinning rods. Anytime I get out my finesse tackle, I feel really comfortable. So I'm looking forward to getting to Beaver and pretty much running the same pattern that I did here at Hartwell.